The situation in West Africa seems to be escalating as the regional bloc ECOWAS makes belligerent noises. What lies ahead for the region? Hawaii is facing what has been called the worst natural disaster in its history through wildfires. What led to this and what is the toll? These are the stories we'll be discussing today on Daily Debrief. Do keep watching this episode and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. For our first story of the day, we go to Niger and West Africa, where we have been continuously tracking the impact since the coup. It's been 2 weeks since the coup took place. Regional bloc ECOWAS has been making more and more belligerent noises. There are reports now that it has activated some kind of a reserve force as a standby. This is even as Niger's authorities have been defiant. Niger has received support from Burkina Faso, from Mali, from Guinea, and from anti-imperialist organizations across the world and in the region. To understand the complexities and nuances of what is happening there, we go to Kambale Musauli. Kambale, thank you so much for speaking to us today. Definitely a very rapidly developing situation. News getting outdated as we speak very quickly. But first of all, I wanted to talk about the ECOWAS deployment of this the activation of this so-called reserve force. What does it really imply as far as what is the position ECOWAS is taking, and what are the kind of contradictions inside?
On August 10th, ECOWAS leaders met to discuss the ultimatum they gave the leaders of the coup in Niger, General Chani and the other presidential guard, and the junta pretty much. And they gave them 7 days to either bring back constitutional order or expect an action by ECOWAS. 7 days passed. The ultimatum was for Sunday, August 6th. It passed, and no action was taken by ECOWAS after the 7 days beyond the meeting. At the meeting, of course, they discussed that they still have the diplomatic solution on the table, but they are going to organize a standby force, which everyone is wondering why there is duplicity, not just for ECOWAS, but for Africa, for the different coups taking place. You had a coup in Chad. African countries did not engage the same way as they've engaged against Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And this would be very bizarre to have a military intervention from ECOWAS in Niger when clearly, with all indications that we have at the moment, images, videos, and communication with people on the ground, the people are not ready or are unwilling to have President Bazoum return into power. So now you have ECOWAS engaging against the will of the people of Niger and against the overwhelming will of the people of the region who see this latest coup as an expression of the frustration of the people of Niger, an expression of the will of the people of Niger to change the political system that has not been for their interest.
Right, and I think there's been a very impressive show of solidarity inside Niger in the larger region in support of this anti-imperialist movement, in support of the coup as well. So can you maybe take us through what organizations in this region, what the people of Niger are saying?
Within 48 hours of the coup, I mean, the people were in the streets. Thousands of people were in the street. And I think that this week ending, there was another mobilization happening at the beginning of August, where people are clearly saying that they are in support of the coup. Why are they in support of the coup? And that's how we have to describe it, because we use the term coup d'etat, and it has this negative connotation. When we look at the coup that Thomas Sankara led in Burkina Faso, which transformed Burkina Faso into a new path. We can look at Fidel's uprising, the revolution, July 26. We started the revolution in the Cuban Revolution and succeeded in later months in bringing about a new Cuba. We can't say all coups are equal. In Niger, in Burkina Faso, in Mali, the coups are expression of a long frustration of the people. And what is this frustration? That they are under imperialism. How do we know that they are under imperialism, or Western imperialism particularly? It's because one, the currency that they use is not controlled by the people of Niger. They use a currency called franc CFA, controlled by the Bank of France. Two, they do not have control of the resources. Just this week, we saw the announcement. This was not for Niger, but it was for Burkina Faso, ending an agreement between France and Burkina Faso from the 60s, where it allowed for French companies to not pay taxes for revenues that generated in Mali. I'm sorry, in Burkina Faso. So when you see that they're ending it, this is the trend in the Western African region, right? Where Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, Francophone Africa, in particularly in West Africa, they are saying they do not want to use French currency, French controlled currency. They do not want France to come into the region, extract the uranium, extract the bauxite, extract the mineral resources of these countries without paying taxes to the people. And also they do not want the French military to be stationed and engage in operations in the countries, where these countries pretty much have lost sovereignty of their land. So that expression across the region is also being manifested by these coups. And as I've always responded in past shows, all coups are now equal. We have to look at countries case by case, but the overwhelming majority of the people of West Africa want to have control of their own affairs, want to have control of their resources, and they want to be able to choose their leaders without being imposed a leader from the West.
And finally, of course, we know that two important countries who are, of course, not in Africa but seem to play such a huge role there, the United States and France. What is the position these two countries have taken? We know, for instance, that Victoria Nuland, the infamous Victoria Nuland, was involved in this.
Niger is a very interesting country. It's right in the Sahel, right, region, but it's geostrategic. It has uranium that's needed for France. One out of three light bulb in France is powered by uranium coming from the Sahel region, particularly Niger. But yet the people of the country do not have access to electricity. So it's very strategic. The second geostrategic position interest of Niger is the U.S. Military base that exists there, actually a drone base. The largest drone base on the African continent that the U.S. has is actually in Niger. And they've used this drone base to launch operations across Africa and probably elsewhere. That brings into question how will the U.S. respond? So far, many people were worried to see Victoria Nuland come to Niger. After what she's done in Ukraine, that the whole world know about the rigged elections, the manipulation of the elections in Ukraine, documented in the documentary by Roger Stone around the elections in Ukraine. On the African continent, everyone wondered why did they send Nuland to Niger for negotiations. The U.S. has threatened to withhold aid to Niger. France has done the same. But in Niger, everyone is clear, said that we do not need your aid. General Chani has been quoted in the press clearly stating that you should cut the aid because we don't need it. You should go ahead and support the homeless people in your countries. Clearly saying that the aid coming should actually go to support the people of the countries providing the aid. A clear message from the leaders of West Africa. Ibrahim Traore had similar comments when he was in Russia, speaking about sovereignty of African people and what we should do. When he thanked Russia for the support we have for wheat, but he also added that it's important for the next year that African countries organize for food sovereignty, for food security, so that next year they don't continue to get aid, echoing Burkina Faso's lost leader, Thomas Sankara, who was killed in the 80s. And Thomas Sankara, in one of his speeches, actually his last speech at the African Union, called on African leaders, one, to not pay Western debt, and two, to also fight for food security and food sovereignty for the people. So all of this is happening. We know what the US is going to do. We know what France will do. And France has been very, very aggressive for the past couple of weeks, particularly with the presence of French military in Cote d'Ivoire. As ECOWAS leaders are meeting to discuss military intervention. Cote d'Ivoire has at least, up from different analysts, 1,500 to about 5,000 soldiers ready to move from Cote d'Ivoire to the region. And the president of Cote d'Ivoire, Ouattara, has already said that he stands ready to engage in this deployment there. Everyone should be clear. The deployment of military forces going into Niger, if it does happen, is not an African-led intervention. It's a French-led intervention with the local sycophant, with the African agent. In the case of Nigeria, the Nigerian president is very ready to send the soldiers, but the Nigerian Senate does not believe in that, right? The Nigerian Senate has pushed for more diplomatic measure. So they can move to have a military intervention, they meaning the West, the French, with the agent on African continent. But rest assured that the people of the region, from Mali, of Modibo Keita, Niger, and Burkina Faso, Thomas Sankara, these countries are ready to unite with Algeria and Mauritania and the people of West Africa to defeat Western imperialism, to stop the imposition of foreign military bases, to stop the pilfering of the resources of the region, and more importantly, to stop the use of franc CFA, which is a symbol of French imperialism in West Africa.
Our next story is from Hawaii. Media reports have been full of horrific visuals as a result of the wildfire, massive amounts of damage, destruction, a number of deaths as well. It's being called the worst disaster, the worst natural disaster in Hawaii's history. And what has led to these wildfires? What kind of impact is it having at a larger sense for the whole land as such? We go to Anish for more. Anish, thank you so much for joining us. So, quite a horrific disaster. Could you maybe tell us as to what are some of the factors that have led to it? Of course, very difficult to say exactly what caused a wildfire, but definitely climatic conditions making it worse.
Yes, one of the issues probably that has been widely cited is the fact that this summer has been actually one of the hottest, arguably the hottest in human history, especially in the northern hemisphere. We have seen temperatures soaring to record highs, to the highest ever recorded in the United States alone in several places, including Hawaii. And this was just July. And on top of that, to have a certain issue of an invasive species of grass being quite widespread, which actually also is speculated to have, expanded or, given more scope for the wildfire to spread into this large territory. So this is to say it's one of the worst disasters that the US has ever faced is an understatement, considering that it has pretty much consumed or affected an entire island, second largest island of the Hawaiian archipelago. And that is in itself a significant problem. We are looking at the fires have definitely spread, even though in a smaller manner, to the neighboring Hawaii Island, which is also called the Big Island in the territory, which also has the capital. Now, the number of people that we have seen being displaced is quite stark. Thousands, about 15,000 are expected to have been displaced already. There's over 1,000 people who have been reported missing. There's no way to trace them. And the fire has been completely subdued. We can't really say, even though rescue forces and voluntary forces are talking about how they have subdued about 70% or so of the fire as of now. It's pretty much still not enough, considering how the climatic conditions are still the same, and it is not going to help if you do not completely subdue the fires, and which is also not very easy considering the scope of it either, because it has completely spread into the city right now, and that has actually, in fact, exacerbated the whole thing.
Right, Anish, could you also maybe take us a bit to what has been the toll, both in terms, of course, there's been a number of deaths, but also the larger impact on what do you call society itself, on the land itself, so to speak?
The toll is actually quite difficult to estimate at this point. Apart from, like, even the death toll right now is a developing figure, which is a problematic thing to begin with. We are looking at already 55 deaths and the injuries in numbering into hundreds. As I said, more than 1,000 people are still to be accounted for. They're still missing, and we do not know how many of them will be part of the casualties as well. So it's a very grim picture, and it might even, surpass the casualty and also the kind of damages that a previous earthquake in 1940s have actually caused in Hawaii, which killed about 96 people. So that is just one part of it. We're also looking at the fact that the town of Lahaina, which used to be the old capital of the Kingdom of Hawaii when Hawaii was still an independent kingdom, separate from the United States, a heritage town, considered a major landmark, U.S. heritage landmark, has been pretty much gutted at this point, entirely, with major heritage monuments and sites being completely charred to the ground. And considering the fact that most of it was built in the mid 19th century, and most of it were also like the construction work was basically wooden work throughout the city, throughout the town, it pretty much is an extinction of a culture, or a massive damage to a culture and heritage of the indigenous people of Hawaii before the colonization happened, before the settlers began becoming the biggest population in the island territory. So that is one significant part of it that is still something that we still do not have a complete estimate of. And obviously, this will affect tourism, which is basically the biggest industry in Hawaii at this point. I mean, like, it was barely recovering from the post-COVID, from the pandemic-induced fallout that has been pretty much there throughout the United States, but Hawaii especially, because of the lack of tourists. But at this point, it might just go back to a situation where that recovery might be reversed to a significant extent. And because Maui itself is pretty much one of the major hotspots of tourism, there are already speculations, although that has to be confirmed, but like that tourism might also have been exacerbated because invasive species came in because of the kind of movement, the massive movement of people through the island as well. So these are especially factors that really needs to be taken into account. We do not know how much of it can be recovered, the kind of damages that we're looking at, and obviously casualties cannot be recovered. As I said, like, it's a developing figure, and the fact that they really do not have a proper estimate, a proper figure to actually go by at this point of time shows that the fires are still a big problem, and it might. If it's not taken it is taken seriously, it is virtually a statewide emergency at this point, with the National Guard mobilized. But even a little bit of laxity in the kind of rescue work that is happening, or the attempt to subdue the fire, it might actually propel back that, like we've seen in California when it actually happened, where dozens of people also were killed in 2018 wildfires. So it's a very complicated situation at this point. So we are looking at a sort of damage that obviously has a human cost, but also a heritage cost, a cost on the history of the people of Hawaii who are still fighting a significant battle against colonialism. So part of their history has been destroyed by these wildfires, and that is a bigger tragedy. That is a significant tragedy that is not being as reported, as widely reported as the other stuff of the wildfire.
Anish, thank you so much for that update. Very grim situation in Hawaii, and really hoping things, things are to some extent they're able to control the fires and carry out relief work. Thank you so much for talking to us. That's all we have in today's episode of Daily Debrief. Do visit our website, peoplesdispatch.org, visit our YouTube channel, watch more episodes of this show, and if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.